This is the Armchair Authority podcast, where we talk about political and video game stuff and hopefully try to keep it pretty casual. Joining me today, we have Jack
Hello.
and we have Robert.
Hi.
So this one might be a bit shorter. We don't really have like too many interesting things to talk about. But the first topic today is we are talking about CRISPR, which is the gene editing technology. Um, Recently in China, there was a scientist who revealed that he had edited the genes of a few patients. I don't remember the exact number, but they're like, babies or whatever. And this caused a huge uproar because other um, experts in this field maybe don't think that we're completely prepared to handle all of the developments that this could bring us. Um, so he's been under a lot of criticism, both from like other like experts in the field and from his own government. Um, so I guess just to start off, um, have any of you looked into this?
I saw a bit of it, but
Okay.
it all seems.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess the most important thing to discuss about this would just be the ethics of doing something like this, right? And what this could set in terms of a precedent for the future.
yeah. So right before we get into the ethics, I would just like to say that sort of get this off the table. One of the reasons why he's being so criticized is because a lot of this stuff isn't like a lot of his work isn't very known. Like it's still like he's still like working on his report and stuff. So there's really no information on what exactly he did. People are just sort of left guessing. Um, so it's sort of like doesn't seem like his work was very well regulated. It just sort of happened, which makes a lot of people really anxious. And I think we could probably all agree that that part is pretty bad.
Yeah, the
Um,
scientific community is upset at him because he isn't going through peer review or hasn't yet. There's also the whole thing of that even ignoring that it probably wasn't very useful because there was the children, their parent or their dads had HIV, so he was genetically modifying them to be resistant to HIV, which really that's not necessary to be. If the mother had HIV, that would be important.
mhm.
So it's just
In modern times, there's ways to sort of prevent HIV from being like transmitted to the offspring usually. So it's like it's really hard to build a case that he was doing any good for anybody here. Um, uh, Also, um, I was like reading like I don't know how verified these people are. It's from a professor at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. He's an RNA researcher, and he put up this tweet trying to explain that so the point is that none of the three match the well-studied Delta 32 mutation, and as far as I could tell, none have been studied in animal models. So like these mutations that he's doing to these kids' genes, they haven't been seen before in animals. So it's sort of like you're introducing this very like artificial gene code into these people. Um, and the concern is, how is this stuff going to hold up throughout their lifetimes when it gets replicated, like, trillions of times? And also, what happens if this enters the gene pool? Like, what if these babies, grow up and have kids, and then the edited gene sort of gets passed down to generations? It's a lot of tough questions there.
Well, wouldn't that just be considered another mutation to be weeded out eventually?
What do you mean?
Because like the artificial introduction could be compared to just like a random mutation, right? Essentially, even though it's not, they haven't discovered it in other animal sequences. Can it just be attributed to a genetic mutation?
Um, well, I mean, the point is that there's sort of, I guess, there's like mutations that can be seen that are sort of repeated throughout different like animals and stuff. They're like sort of like these set blocks of like genetic code or whatever that have been documented, and these like specific mutations are stuff that it's never been. I guess his quote is these treatments produced mutations that haven't been vetted in animal models. So it's not just sort of like It's not just sort of like some kind of like a random thing, it's like it's like a non-animal gene sequence.
But still, though, how can we?
How did he come up with these mutations?
He has like some explanation for it. I don't know anything about like gene research.
Are we jumping the gun here a little bit though? Like, just because it's being introduced doesn't mean that it will like stay in the gene pool, right?
Well, it will because this is if you code something into somebody's like RNA or DNA or whatever, it's going to be replicated exactly, right? That's how that works.
Well, no, like in the overall like human gene pool. Like, what's to say that it just won't, like, they aren't able to reproduce, or just because of the genetic disadvantages that it gives, that it could just be, natural selection could happen. And it,
Feels weird talking about people that are alive that way.
No, well, we don't know what's going to happen to them. But I mean, like, I assume that if they were to have kids or whatever, the edited stuff would, pass over, or at least there's a chance it would. I guess it's not a guarantee because of like how the like alleles work or whatever. But yeah. But it's like we're opening a door to like if we leave this unregulated, do we really want these weird non-animal mutations passing through generations and generations? Is it something that's good for us? But anyways, that's go ahead.
I wouldn't say that like these would be good for us, or that we would want them to be passed down necessarily. It's just that right now the way that they're doing it is a little bit too random and, like they said, unvetted. So you don't know exactly what will go down in like the next generation or any generations beyond that.
Yeah.
I'm just extremely wary of all human genetic stuff.
But I guess moving on past these very like case-specific issues with this gene modification stuff, and getting into the more broader picture of like modifying genes in general, more of the ethics behind it. What are your stances on that?
Ethics for modifying genes. Now, we're talking specifically humans, right?
I mean, I think that's where people don't really care about animals. Okay, we eat them; it's whatever, dude.
We're talking as the whole GMO or whatever, but yeah, let's ignore that.
Yeah.
Let's go. All right. So I guess in terms of the ethics, I guess the number one thing would be like consent first, right?
Ooh, well, yeah. Well, I guess sure. You have to, I guess, say if you value consent of a baby. Yeah, I guess that is a question.
So if you go along that route, then it's not really ethical per se because you don't have the consent of the baby.
Yeah. Well, let me, I guess, backtrack. You're not getting consent from a baby. You're getting consent from like an embryo.
Yes.
I mean, is there really a difference, though? Neither of them can consent to what you're asking them.
Well, I mean, do you agree? Do you think that abortion is okay?
I do not. At least because I don't like our current blurry line of, because it's got to become a person somewhere. And like, say you've got the weirdest or the wildest argument I've heard out there is that personhood doesn't start until like 7, which most people will agree that that is ridiculous. But I mean, then you get into the stuff of, I don't know. I want to play very loose, or very not loose. I want to be very concerned, just I guess conservative of when do we treat them as people and when do we not.
You just want like a set defined boundary or like line.
I would probably disagree with the set defined boundary when we got it, but I would like to find one. And most of the current discourse on it is just, I don't find it convincing.
But then in like not going to the abortion thing, but to talk about consent again, um, do we give the power of consent to the parents?
Well, we already do with
Yeah,
babies.
that's typically how it works with kids. I brought up abortion because, like, typically the embryos aren't consenting to being, aborted.
No, no, of
So
course not.
it's sort of tied in that way. Um,
So the question is then, if the parents do give consent, is that okay?
um, I mean, yeah, it's like, I guess it depends on what you choose to value. Um, it's something that I haven't personally really made up my mind on. Like the idea of like drawing the line of what is a human. If you're going to do that, I think it would make sense to do it at the time of conception. Although I personally think that I kind of value consciousness more than like what is human. Um, so I guess I'm more okay with abortion, but I can understand the other side of the argument. Yeah.
I don't know, just the whole genetic modification thing that it feels like first we allow it and then becomes normal, and then I know this is a slippery slope thing I'm arguing, but just eventually it becomes like Gattaca, where if you don't have the you weren't specially conceived with the genetic modifications, then your insurance premiums go up and you're not allowed to do things. And
It's true because you'd essentially be creating like a new race of like wealthy people, right? Um, like people always say, oh well, the wealthy always have access to like the best technology and healthcare, whatever first, anyways. But this I think would be on a different magnitude, whereas they would become like a different race of people.
yeah,
Then what about genetic modification to remove like something like Down syndrome?
Um,
Would you find that ethically acceptable?
well, then you have arguments that instead of you're returning them to the human normal, whatever that is, as opposed to making them better. Now, there's a whole lot of concerns with that argument too, but I think most people would be less concerned with that.
So that would be like a case where it would be more acceptable.
Yeah.
yeah, pragmatically, it might be speaking, or it might be pragmatically speaking, it might be nice if we could sort of draw a line between like gene repair and like gene improvement. Um, Although I guess we're both pretty similar. But I mean, like, I guess the difference would be like maybe it would be okay to make sure that your kid doesn't have Down syndrome, but maybe it wouldn't be okay to make sure that your kid is like 6'2", uh, high school or like I mean like football athlete, Einstein brain. Maybe this is stuff that maybe shouldn't be
Of
pursued so much.
course, this is now starting to feel like with the autism and with Down syndrome, the case where a lot of them don't want to be viewed as different, and that they're offended that you'd rather have them be normal than not at all. Or
I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to backtrack. I think that I'm
I
kind of
think
starting to lean towards no, not even for like the genetic disorders that should be allowed. Because when you allow stuff like this, you're sort of giving wealthy people a way out. You're giving them a way to not care. Like we see this in like the education system, where wealthy people can sort of group themselves into like the private school districts and then just not care about the public school system. So everyone else suffers because of this. I think the same thing would happen if you allowed wealthy people to like weed out things like Alzheimer's and those other kinds of diseases. They would simply be allowed to not care about issues that are plaguing the other millions and millions of people out there.
also I was looking for the word neurotypical.
Right.
But this is under like the assumption of our current healthcare system, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to make this available for everybody, um, yeah, it could be more persuasive.
But even then, it would have to get to a certain point where it was readily available to everyone. before you would put the stamp of approval on that?
Yeah, I think so.
It's gonna take some time then, just because it's the way
I
these
don't.
things go.
Will it ever be equally available though? Because just it'll be eventually be the point where it's just just be even better stuff would be developed.
Well, I didn't say like equally. I just say more readily available.
Hmm. Yeah.
Is this something that we should be like? I mean, you said like it's going to take a while, but is this something that really should be like rushed towards? Like, is this really like that great of a thing? Um,
Um, like curing genetic diseases?
uh, yeah, sure.
I think so. Like, I mean, you're stopping another person's suffering.
Yeah, but if we're interested in stopping suffering, there's probably less intensive ways to do that. Like, I think that we have the resources to stop a lot of suffering, but we choose not to. Um, and so I don't know if that's really the goal here.
To, like, you mean that
But
we have,
we have
or
more empty houses than we have homeless people. You
mm,
know, we have food to feed everybody, and like in
mm.
the world, really. It's
Yeah.
That's just misallocation of resources.
yeah,
So you're saying that this is such a minor thing in the whole like spectrum of suffering that it shouldn't really even matter?
not that it doesn't matter, but maybe this isn't something that needs to be fast tracked.
I still say that anywhere we can eliminate suffering, at least a little bit, is fine to pursue.
Hmm.
Because I don't think that like
Would you pursue it even if it wasn't available to everyone?
if it wasn't available, but if you stop pursuing it, then it definitely is a reality, right? But if you keep on pursuing it, you could make it better and to the point where it is readily available.
Yeah, but let's say we were sticking to like this current system where um, of healthcare, and it wasn't like we didn't switch to like the single payer system. Um, would you be okay with like making this like a very like available thing to people who make like over $1 million a year or whatever, but then like no one else could ever hope to afford it?
Uh, because it's in its initial stages, it'll certainly be that, right? Where only the wealthy can afford it.
Mm.
But if it doesn't progress, then how do we make it available to the
Well,
people without?
I mean, there's a difference, I guess. Maybe you should have clarified this here. I should have asked you to clarify this. Like, even I think that this should continue to be pursued. I just don't think that it should be like I don't think this is something that we should be rushing towards at full speed.
Full speed, I don't think so, but it still should be pursued.
Yeah, sure.
It'll take the time it needs to like fully develop into something feasible and like widespread, but that'll take as long as it needs to.
When you said eliminate suffering, my brain went straight Skynet and thought fastest way to do that would just be kill everyone at once. So
But I mean, that's true too.
That is true.
There's a lot of ways we can try to eliminate suffering.
yeah, I don't even know if eliminating suffering is completely the part of the completely it because suffering is part of the human experience. I might argue. I don't know if I would.
As we know it,
Yeah.
it could not be, but as
I
we know
mean,
it, it
like,
is.
this is suffering that you're like given at birth versus suffering that you just encounter,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I would say that uh, if someone's born into like a broken household, it's also sort of suffering that's going to start at their birth that they have no control over.
Yes, that is also true.
I just don't know if like if our goal is to sort of minimize suffering, this is something that should be pursued, but it should. I don't know if this should be like, yeah, I don't know if this should be fast tracked because we already have the resources to eliminate a lot of suffering, It's just a matter of do we want to or not. And it seems like right now the answer in the United States is no, we don't want to.
We don't want to for certain things, I think.
Okay, well, is there anything else to be said on the subject?
No, I think we dragged it out for long enough. Let's move
Yeah.
on to the next topic.
Okay. Robert, any last words you want to say? Or
Have either of you seen Gattaca?
no, I haven't.
No, I can't say that I have.
I would recommend watching the movie.
Okay. Well, on to our next topic. We have had two new news incidences that are related to Trump. The first one was Manafort, Paul Manafort. It came out that he was like lying to Mueller, and not only was he lying to Mueller, but he was also feeding information about his questions to the Trump administration. Um, so I guess the big question here, and this could be a big deal because if he gets like prosecuted for this, it could very well be a life sentence for him. So I guess the big question is, what exactly, why would he go to such great lengths to hide, to sort of hide what was going on from, the Mueller investigation? If, yeah, why would he risk life in prison essentially for this?
I mean, money speaks pretty loudly, so I've heard. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there has to be like tremendous pressure from the Trump campaign and other officials
Mhm.
to keep it on the down low. So I think with all that pressure, I think someone could be convinced to hide all this information, even at the risk of going to life in prison.
Yeah. Robert, any thoughts?
I no longer know how to respond to all the news related to the politics stuff. They're probably, yeah, I think there should be prison sentences, but I kind of doubt any will happen.
Yeah. It seems like from what I have read, it seems like the new feeling is that Manafort isn't really considered a very reliable witness by the Mueller investigation. Um, but I also hear a lot of this stuff is very strategically placed out. Like it's no accident that this stuff sort of like happens this way. Like the Mueller sort of team is like very methodical in how they set these things up to make sure that everyone's telling the truth and that they're getting all the information they can. It's pretty interesting. I kind of hope that more information about this whole investigation becomes public, like
But
someday in the future.
but the whole point of this investigation is to like determine like whether Russia tampered in the elections, which it seems like it's very likely.
Mm.
But the ultimate goal is to see whether this has any effect on the Trump presidency as it currently stands, right? And I guess if it is successful and finds out that there was collusion with the Russians, does that mean that a Trump impeachment will be likely in the future?
Yeah, the Democrats have said they're not going to try to impeach Trump. Um, And I think the reason for that is because with the midterms are coming up pretty soon anyways, and this investigation's taking a long time, they don't necessarily want to be seen as like the party that wants to like jail the president during midterms.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, but I would say to add on to that, it's not just to see. It's not just to like try to like see if Trump can be in any way responsible for like the Russian interference. It's also, I think, like another like sort of a side effect of this is to try to figure out how to like prevent this from happening again in the future.
Mm. But I mean, I've also heard about some people are saying that it's scarier to see Mike Pence as president over Trump.
Yeah, that could be another reason why the Democrats aren't so keen on impeachment.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'd rather go with a more competent guy. But
I don't know. Mike Pence has some pretty scary beliefs, in my opinion. Sometimes having an incompetent person can be better than a competent person with bad intentions.
I suppose.
That'll probably just be a discussion for later on, though.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too deep in the rabbit hole.
So moving on to the next incidents, we had Cohen, um, I guess, Michael Cohen. He was sort of like the lawyer for Trump. I think he was the one that tried to sort of like bribe like Stormy Daniels from not like talking about the sex scandal or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's also trying to make a plea deal, and he also seems to be indicating that Trump is a lot more involved in like business dealings with like Russian oligarchs a lot like later than what people originally thought. Like I think they were like still like discussing um, bringing like the Trump business to Russia, like as late as like July 14th, 2016, which is pretty much when a lot of the election stuff is happening. So on one hand, he's praising the Russians, being very like positive about Russia, and then he's also like doing business with Russia. Seems like a pretty bad conflict of interest there. So I guess it's just another black mark against Trump's campaign. And the other side effect of this is we get more information on like their private meeting that they had, and it's just another possible link um, between Trump himself and Russian influence. Um, I don't know if there's really much to discuss here.
No, I think it's just something really to mention and like help us keep track of what's going on in the Mueller investigation and like the progress of that.
Yeah.
But it's good to mention regardless, though, just
Yeah.
as a FYI.
I've seen some people speculating that the Mueller investigation might be coming to a close soon.
With the new Attorney General.
Well, not just because of that, but just because they might finally be wrapping up, possibly. I don't know.
Okay.
It's been,
Well, one way or another, it'll get resolved.
Yeah.
How long has it been going for now?
Um,
Feels like forever.
Probably as long as Trump was in the White House, so almost 2 years.
yeah. Yeah. I know that there have been other investigations into like presidential figures that have taken like 5 years or something. So I mean, so it could be a while.
Looks like May 2017. Yeah, it's a year and a half.
Okay, yeah. So I guess moving along, let's talk about President Bush, I guess, briefly. So the older one, Bush Sr., he passed away. I think he was like 94. It was like natural causes, I presume.
Mhm.
But yeah. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, in a completely selfish way that misses kind of the impact of this. If he had survived about another year, I would have been able to get a day off because I'll be working for the government. But oh well.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's always not a good. Well, I mean, it's always sad to see someone go, right? But at the age that he was, and with all the medical complications that he has, I think pretty much the world knew that it was an eventuality that it was going to happen. But I think because he was kind of before our time, we really don't have much to like say about his policies or like do a reflection of what he's done. In particular, because that was obviously before us.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally find it kind of hard to care about the deaths of people who are like over like 80, because it seems like, they've had a good run, Like I didn't really care so much about Stanley passing away because it seems like,
Yeah, of course. I mean, like death is the
they're-
eventuality of
Yeah.
human life. So
yeah. Um,
people had been expecting it for a while, also because his wife died back in April.
Mm-hmm.
Although one thing, it's always interesting when this happens. Like, it seems to especially happen around the Republican candidates. But every time a Republican candidate like McCain or like Bush dies or whatever, um, there's always like a section of like sort of like leftist communities, like communists or socialists or whatever, that sort of like parade around the deaths, saying, "Oh, the war criminal's dead," and they like joke about it and laugh about it. Um, but I guess it brings up the question. What kind of behavior do you think is sort of expected around when someone dies? Like, do you think that it's bad to do that, or do you think that can you understand their point of view, or um,
Uh, I don't know if like immediately after they die, it's good to air out like the dirty laundry.
mm,
Probably not the best time, but I think it has to happen at some point as
mm,
like a retrospective of their life and their like what they've done and an analysis on like whether it was like objectively good or its impacts and consequences. I think that should be done, but I don't think it should happen this soon.
mm,
Probably will have its most impact if it's immediate, because that's when people care.
That's true. That is true. So it's a fine line to walk.
yeah, I mean, it's not something I fully made up my mind on, but I do think that generally the type of people that will try to immediately jump on that it just seems very like unsavory. It just doesn't seem like very pleasant behavior. But
No,
I
no.
mean, I don't necessarily think that they're doing anything like morally wrong or anything. It's just it's, pretty edgy.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, so I guess moving right along. Okay. So Robert, I know that you're a fan of college football, um, and there's something you want to discuss about a
Oh,
certain state and their team.
oh yeah, the state of Texas, which I do not believe in, particularly the University of Texas.
Mm,
So there's been a lot of stupidity around the football program. So their signature thing for celebration is they'll do a horns up, which is a hand gesture. And so quite a few schools in response, because of their dislike of that particular institution, will do a horns down, where it's the same thing but upside down.
mm,
Well, the conference that Texas is in, the Big 12, they've started penalizing players who have done that, and there's been kind of mixed result or response to that. They're like, at first it was like that's always going to be a penalty, but then there was a clarification that it's context dependent.
mm,
But yeah, so there's been a lot of stupid stuff with that, and I don't know that I saw one get penalized during the Big 12 championship yesterday, but there might have been. Uh, but anyway, so that ties in with the head coach of Texas, Tom Herman, who, when asked about all this, he was like, "Oh, all these schools, they take our stuff and turn it around, but we handle ourselves with class," which is kind of amusing because there was a point in the game against Oklahoma State where he looked like he wanted to fight the other coach.
mm,
I mean, this is just all ridiculous in general, right?
Yeah.
Just banning or like having consequences from doing the horns down thing. It's I don't know, it's like a tradition at this point, and I think that stuff like trash talking and like celebration and stuff in sports should be allowed. Like it shouldn't like go over the top crazy, right? But this thing, it helps the competitive spirit and it makes it so that like banter is always nice to see. And if you get all like the professional like hoity-toity, super polite athletes and like spectators, it honestly just takes out the fun of some of these sports events.
yeah, like I'm generally very much against like sort of like this groupthink thing, like groupthink. So like like school spirit, I feel like it should all be kept pretty silly, right? Like nobody should be taking this stuff like too seriously. Like to make it like against the rules to like disparage in other schools like hand sign or whatever. It seems really dumb to me. um, like at the end of the day, it's like these are like tens of thousands of people watching like these young kids like destroy their bodies and minds for like basically no money. Um, so yeah, the whole thing that seems silly to me to draw the line that like you can't do the upside down horns.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is silly, but I also don't do the horns down because I don't like thinking about Texas other than that they lost to Kansas in football.
Yeah.
Only one person in our audience would have understood that and care about football in general. So to that one person out there, we got you covered with our bi-weekly sports talk.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to Pokemon Let's Go. We talked about it 2 weeks ago when the game had just come out. Um, so it's been out for 2 weeks, obviously, and more people's reactions to it are sort of being made clear, and it seems like overall it's developed a very like positive reaction, really, like sort of a surprised positive reaction. And I would just like to take this time to say I knew it from the start, and I knew that this game was like really perfecting the formula, and yeah. But I know that Robert's played some of it, so I wanted to hear his thoughts on the game.
Yeah. So I have enjoyed my time with it. I haven't gone too far into it, but it's got a lot of really fleshed out parts, and it's pretty cute. And then I do like the going through the tall grass not being completely random.
Wait, hold up a second. The most important question is: did you buy Let's Go Pikachu or Let's Go Eevee?
I bought Pikachu because
Okay.
from what I saw before I bought it, a lot of the reactions are the same for both Pikachu and Eevee, but they make no sense on Eevee because they were based off like show references and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Well, regardless of that, I still think you made the right choice, and I can still talk to you. Because if you chose an Eevee, ooh,
Yeah,
you might have some issues then.
the best thing about Eevee is that it can evolve, and they completely took that out.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the one thing, my one big criticism of this game, well, I mean, I have several like improvements I would like to see, but in this game in particular, so I'm not really convinced on like the whole starter Pokemon thing that they did. I know that this game they tried to put a big focus on like trying to befriend your Pokemon, and I know that's maybe a selling point for other people, although I personally have never really cared for it. Um, but like your starter Pokemon, yeah, you can evolve them, and they're very overpowered. Like not only can you sort of jump into battle and sort of like stop like negative effects from happening to them, but it's like they also get access to like special like exclusive moves that are very like OP. Um, I don't know. I found the game to be a lot more mentally engaging if I just removed the starter Pokemon from my team and just used other Pokemon.
Even ignoring that, it's still extremely unbalanced because of the AV system. So like you can beat the Elite Four with a level 3 Magikarp with maxed out AVs.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's even easier than it would have been in older games beating it with a level 100 Magikarp. Because just the AV system is nuts.
Well, first off, what are AVs?
It
For
replaces
the uninformed.
so something values, but basically, it gets an AV by feeding it candy, and the AV is just it completely dwarfs the base stats or its normal stats, so that a weaker Pokemon, a low-level Pokemon with maxed AVs will have much higher stats than a much higher level without AVs.
Mm. But the ultra special moves thing, doesn't that make up for the starter not being able to evolve?
I think I go beyond it.
They go beyond.
I kind of think so. Yeah, they're really good. But maybe I guess yeah. Well, like the stats are sort of made up for by the AV thing, right?
Yeah.
And these moves are like really good. It seems like most people agree. Like I think Eevee is considered like the best competitive Pokemon to use. Like the starter Eevee, not like the Eevees that you catch in the wild. So I guess if you bought Pokemon Eevee, you should be happy about that.
Did you buy Pokeball Plus or whatever it's called?
No.
You didn't want a $40 Mew?
Nope.
Yeah, I have enough Mews already lying around.
Yep. Another criticism I have of this game, it seems like a downgrade from the previous games that they had on 3DS, is the camera is always in sort of like the orthogonal, sort of like diagonal kind of view of the world. I really liked how in the previous games, occasionally the camera would sort of, would dip down and get like right into like the ground level to make you feel sort of more immersed in the world. Um, there's none of that, and yeah, Let's Go. It's very much styled to sort of like have that classic camera angle.
Yeah, I kept trying to use the other stick to move the camera like I've been able to on other Switch games, and it kept not doing it.
Yeah.
Yes. So I haven't played it that much, in part because I've been playing the normal Pokemon Go, because they've had their event weekend lately. So I've been out. I walked 2.5 hours last night catching Beldums and Dratini's.
Nope. Yeah, I've played some Pokemon Go as well. Although my bag is like full of like potions and berries and stuff. So like I tend to only have like 10 Pokeballs at a time, and since I kind of suck at catching Pokemon, I go through them, and then I'm sort of left with like nothing to do.
I went through about 70 Ultra Balls over the last couple days.
Is there any way to expand like an inventory without going pay to win?
You have to you hold the gym, and for every 10 minutes you hold the gym, you get 1 coin. It's
Okay.
like last night, between putting 3 Pokemon in the gym and when I woke up, I spent more than 500 combined minutes. So I got my 50 coins for the day, which then put me at having 200 coins in my inventory. So yeah, now I can upgrade my inventory.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, if you do that 4 days in a row and get max coins, you can buy more bag space.
I still really like the concept of Pokemon Go. Like the first few weeks it was out, it was very magical, right? Like this idea that, you know, video games could not just be like this anti-social thing, and that people would actually go out and like see each other and like hang out and stuff out, in the great outdoors. It was cool. I hope that somehow that can happen again.
Now
The great outdoors of the city streets.
And exploring cities is pretty cool.
So I wouldn't equate that to the great outdoors.
I mean, it's outside. Whatever.
Oh, we forgot to mention how they've announced PvP.
No, yeah, it's pretty gimps though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the stuff in Pokemon Go, I'd rather just play normal Pokemon. But
Yeah, they do, it seems like they're adding some battling in there, which I mean that's cool. Okay, so moving along, another video gaming news. There's been a lot of outrage over Fallout 76, and in particular, or I guess in addition, their pre-order bonus.
yeah, the so-called Duffel Kerfuffle.
Yeah. They promised a really nice canvas bag, and canvas is actually, pretty thick, durable material. I could see why people would think that would be like a cool incentive to get it. And instead, they got like a really crappy like nylon bag, and there's been a lot of anger over that.
I mean, that just adds to the dumpster fire that Fallout 76 is already.
Yeah,
So Bethesda's really going all out on this one.
I think they're gonna lose. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I think this is gonna make them lose a lot of respect among even their core fans. I think it's kind of expected their games are gonna be like buggy, but everything I've heard seems like this game is pretty unplayable. Yeah, it's.
I mean, we just have to wait for Elder Scrolls 6 to put the final nail in their coffin.
Yeah, they're still using the same engine.
Yeah. Using that same creation Gamebryo engine.
Yep.
I think that was just something quick to mention, but I think, shall we move on to the last question of the day?
Yeah. So, Robert, you had You had a question for us?
Yeah. So, when you're old and about to die, how do you think you'll look back on current you? As
Why
in,
don't you start off answering this question yourself to give us some time to mull over?
well, I mean, compared to me of a few years ago, I think I'd be much more, I'd be much less annoyed at current me because I've kind of finally started figuring out life. Now, I still have a lot of frustrations, even with myself now, of just I don't know what I'm doing, and that if I knew what to do, then it'd be so much easier. But yeah, I think so. Looking back, I think it'll just be I did okay. I would have been able to do better if I just knew what to do. So just somewhat frustrated, but that's just how I am.
Um, yeah, I would hope that by the time I'm 80, I have enough other like things going on, like other achievements or like interesting like life experiences that I wouldn't be too like um I wouldn't spend like too much energy pondering like what I was doing at my current age. But I don't I still think that I'm changing quite a bit. Like I've been really into like introspection, a lot of like introspective thinking over the last like I don't know maybe like 2 years now, maybe closer to just 1 year, but yeah I've really been digging into a lot of like philosophy, um, music. Um, I've been trying to find like good like hobbies to pursue. Uh, yeah, I think my worldview has been shaped quite rapidly over the last few years, and I guess I kind of hope that I can sort of keep up that pace. Sometimes I wonder if I'm starting to lag behind a bit. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, you're racing against yourself, really, not against anyone else, right? That's like the best way of thinking about those types of things.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
for
not
sure.
like everyone reaches the finish line in different ways.
Mm,
I guess for me though, I would think of my current self as being really dumb. That's just how things tend to be, right? Your older self views the actions that your younger self took as to be dumb, stupid, and why did you even think of that in the first place? So I think that's what my thoughts would be about my current self. I can't really like I don't want to go and say, "Oh, I would think fondly back on these times," because I don't know if I will think like that. I don't know if how my the rest of my life will go and whether I will view this time as positive or negative um, in general. So I'm just gonna say that I'm gonna think back and say, why did you do these stupid things in the past? Why were you so dumb back then?
Uh,
yeah, I guess my main thing is I always want to be working towards a me that I'm like more proud of because I feel like in the end and when I'm 80 years old or whatever, if I can be sort of proud of like who I am at that moment, that means that I can forgive like all of the mistakes that I've made, right? Because all of those mistakes are a part of like the growing process. Like
yeah.
I can't be myself like who I am without the dumb stuff I've done or thought in the past. It's all like a continuous flow.
Yeah. Honestly, I'll probably barely remember now.
Yeah, it's true.
No, don't worry, we have this record here. You can always go back to youtube.com/Armchair Authority podcast and
Yeah,
reflect.
because it'll still be around with our Google overlords. But
You can always go review these VODs.
yeah, just you kind of need a sleep to form memories. So yeah, but yeah, yeah. So I mean, I'll be somewhat disappointed, but just yeah, it's through the failure that you learn. Oh, hey, don't do that anymore.
Yeah. It's interesting because humans are like the only known species that actually like we like tell ourselves our stories about ourselves. Um, no other species like sits down and thinks about these memories in this way. Uh, it's interesting. Um, So, any more thoughts on that topic?
No, I think I'm pretty much all talked out.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll be ending this podcast. Um, Armchair Authority. It's our second podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.